Total Sports Zone. All sports, all action, one zone.
Today, we've got a story about two absolute sports legends, a chance meeting, and the wild moment one of them had his whole reality just completely turned upside down.
So, think about this for a second. How can a guy who's 6'4", a professional football player no less, suddenly feel small? It sounds like a trick question, right? But that's exactly what we're digging into here.
All right, so to get to the bottom of this, you gotta meet our two main players. They're both giants in the Bay Area sports scene, but they come from totally different worlds. We're talking about George Kittle and, of course, the one and only Steph Curry.
Okay, first up, let's talk George Kittle. When his name comes up, you immediately think of the NFL, right? Pure raw power. We're talking about a league that is literally built on guys being absolute units. Force, size, the whole 9 yards.
I mean, just picture the teams in his world. The 49ers, the Chiefs, the Ravens, Cowboys, Packers. These aren't just teams, they're collections of some of the biggest, baddest dudes on earth. And that's just a normal Tuesday for George Kittle.
Okay, now let's switch gears and jump over to Steph Curry's universe, the NBA. And yeah, it's also a place full of insane athletes, defined by height and length. But it's a whole different kind of athletic planet.
And you know the vibe here, right? The Warriors, the Lakers, the Celtics. These courts are crawling with giants. Height is everything. So you've got these two totally separate ecosystems for elite athletes. Keep that in mind.
All right, so we've got their two worlds set up, but here's where it gets really interesting. It's all about how these guys are seen inside their own little bubbles. This part is absolutely key.
So in the NFL, you've got George Kittle, 6'4", which sounds huge to us, right? But for an NFL tight end, he's kind of just average. He's a perfectly normal-sized guy in a land of absolute giants. But then you flip it. You look at Steph Curry. He's 6'2", and what do we always hear? He's one of the smaller guys out there. The whole story around him is the quote-unquote undersized guard who took over the league. So get this. We've got one average guy and one small guy. Or so they say.
So what happens when these two different realities, these two completely separate perceptions, finally crash into each other? Well, this is where our story really takes off.
And the scene isn't what you'd expect. It's not a football field. It's not a basketball court. Nope. They're on neutral ground at a San Francisco Giants baseball game. Just two local heroes meeting for the first time.
And Kittle's reaction to finally meeting Steph? He said it, plain and simple. It really messed with my mental state. I mean, how funny and honest is that? That one sentence tells you everything.
And he actually explained what was going through his head. He said he was just thinking, shoot, I'm not that big. I'm just not. Can you believe that? A 6'4" NFL machine is looking at the small NBA player and having a full-on identity crisis about his size.
So what on earth happened here? What was the glitch in the matrix? To figure it out, we've got to look at the actual numbers, the tail of the tape, because that's where the truth is. Okay, so check this out. You've got George Kittle, 6'4". The perception, he's average for his job. Then you've got Steph Curry, 6'2". The perception, small for his job. Those labels make them sound like they're from different planets. But what's the real difference?
2 inches. That's it. Just 2. The entire mental breakdown, the thing that messed with his mental state, was all over a difference that's about the height of a bottle cap. It's wild.
And this is the whole key to the story. For years, George Kittle had been hearing the narrative, Steph Curry, the small guy. So in his head, he was expecting to meet someone, way smaller than him. But when they actually stood face to face, they were practically looking each other in the eye. The reality just completely short-circuited the story he'd been told.
You know, this whole thing is such a perfect example of a way bigger idea, one that has nothing to do with sports, really. It's all about how the world we live in literally shapes what we think is real.
Let's just break it down super simply. The environment you're in sets your idea of normal. For Kittle, in the NFL, being 6'4" is the baseline. It's standard. But in the NBA, where guys are regularly 6'7" or taller, 6'2" feels small. The big shock for Kittle was when his NFL normal ran smack into the real-life person behind the NBA small label, and he realized they were basically the same size.
And really, that's the whole point of this story. Everything we think is big or small, or even fast or slow, successful or not, it almost always depends on the little bubble we're in at the moment. Our reality is just a bunch of comparisons we're constantly making.
So that kind of makes you think, doesn't it? What's something in your own life that you think is a hard fact, but might totally flip on its head if you just walked into a different room or talked to a different group of people? What part of your reality is maybe just perspective?